Let's say it's 11:47 p.m. You're on Zillow again. You filtered out the fixer-uppers, the investor specials, and the homes that look like they survived 3 separate decades without a single renovation. What's left? $497, $000, $512, $000, $534, $000. And the photos show beige carpet, oak cabinets from 2004, a backyard roughly the size of a yoga mat. And somehow, this is labeled a starter home. So you start doing the math in your head. Okay, if I get a raise, maybe cut some spending, maybe I'm just behind. No, you're not behind. The numbers are. Today, we're not talking about whether a bank will approve you. We're answering a different question. Who can actually afford a $500, $000 house in 2026 without financially suffocating? Because qualifying for a mortgage and living comfortably with one are two very different realities. Step 1. The price versus income reality. In many U.S. cities right now, $500, $000 isn't luxury. It's average. In places like Denver, Austin, and most metro-adjacent suburbs, $500,000 buys you 1,200 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a modest yard. That's not extravagance. That's baseline. Now let's compare that to income. Median U.S. household income, roughly $84, $000. So we're asking households earning $84, $000 a year to buy homes that cost 6 times that amount. Historically, home prices were closer to 3x income. 6 times. That's not normal. That's stretched. But people still say, you can make it work. The bank says you're approved. Your parents bought a home on less. TikTok says real estate is easy. So where's the disconnect? Affordable doesn't mean approved. It means sustainable. Step 2. The down payment wall. Let's start with the first barrier, cash. The traditional benchmark is 20% down. On $500, $000, that's $100, $000 up front. 6 figures in cash. The median savings account balance in America is under $10, $000. That's not a little short. That's a canyon. So, maybe you save aggressively. Let's assume you earn $84, $000, and somehow manage to save 10% of your gross income every year, which is already ambitious. That's $8, $400 annually, to reach $100, $000. Roughly 12 years. And that assumes home prices don't rise. You never face an emergency. You never move. You never lose income. Not exactly realistic. Step 3. The lower down payment trap. So most people don't put 20% down. They put 5% or 10%. Let's say you scrape together 10%. That's $50, $000 down. Now you borrow $450, $000. But because you didn't put 20% down, you unlock something called PMI, Private Mortgage Insurance, which is essentially this. You pay extra every month because you're considered higher risk. And that insurance, it protects the lender, not you. That can run $200, $400 per month. Before you've even unpacked a box, you're paying a penalty for not being wealthy enough. Step 4. The real monthly cost. Let's run actual numbers. Loan, $450, $000. Interest rate 7%. Your principal and interest alone land around $2, $800 per month. That's just the loan. Now layer on reality. Property taxes, $4, $000, $8, $000 annually. Call it $500 per month. Homeowners insurance, rising fast in many states, $300 per month. Maintenance, rule of thumb, 1% of home value per year. That's $5, $000 annually. $417 per month. PMI, $300 per month. Let's total it. Mortgage, $2, $800. Taxes, $500. Insurance, $300. Maintenance, $417. PMI, $300. That's roughly $4, 300 plus per month. And that's assuming the roof is fine. The HVAC service summer. The HOA doesn't drop a surprise assessment. Nothing floods, cracks, or fails. This isn't worst case. This is normal case. Step 5. So what income do you actually need? Financial planners recommend spending no more than 28% of your gross income on housing. Banks will approve you up to 43% debt to income. Those are very different standards. So let's reverse engineer it. If housing costs $4,300 per month, what income makes that 28%? That's where things get interesting and slightly terrifying. Let's finish the equation. We said the all-in monthly cost of that $500,000 house is about $4,300 plus. If housing is supposed to be 28% of your gross income, that means you need to earn roughly $185,000, $190,000 per year. If we loosen the standard and use the bank-friendly 43% debt to income rule, you still need about $150,000 annually. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Only a small slice of American households make that kind of money, roughly 10 to 2%, which means the vast majority of households cannot afford a $500,000 home in a way that's financially stable. That's not pessimism. That's arithmetic. So who's buying these houses? Because clearly they're selling. A few groups show up again and again. Dual income couples in high-paying industries, people receiving family assistance or inheritance, buyers stretching themselves to the absolute limit. Let's look at what stretching actually looks like. Case study, a household that should be fine. Meet a hypothetical couple. Combined income, $160, $000 per year. On paper, they're doing well. Upper middle class, college educated, stable careers. They should feel comfortable, right? Let's break it down. $160, $000 gross income sounds strong until taxes enter the chat. After federal taxes, state taxes, payroll taxes, and a modest retirement contribution, they're likely bringing home around $9, $9, $500 per month. That's their real usable income. Now subtract housing, $4, $367 per month. They're left with roughly $5, $100 for everything else. Everything. The rest of life costs money. 2 car payments, $800. Car insurance, $250. Gas and commuting, $300. Student loans, $600. Health insurance premiums, $400. Groceries for a family trying to eat decently, $800. Utilities, power, water, internet, phones, $450. We're now down to about $1, $500 remaining. And that's before clothing, kids' activities, date nights, car repairs, medical deductibles, travel. Building a real emergency fund. Housing is now eating nearly half of their take-home pay. Not gross income. Take-home. These aren't reckless spenders. They're not buying boats. They're not flying first class. They bought a house, the market labeled normal. What that actually feels like. It feels like tension. It feels like checking your bank app before making small purchases. It feels like hoping nothing breaks this month. It feels like doing mental gymnastics at 2 a.m. about whether tires can last one more season. Because here's the reality. HVAC replacement, $5, $000 plus. Minor car accident, $1, $000 deductible. Dental work, financing. Roof issue, credit card. 1 disruption, 1 job loss, 1 emergency, and the margin disappears. This is a household earning $160, $000. Now, imagine the same home purchase at $120, $000 income, $100, $000 income, or the actual median income of $84, $000. At median income, this isn't tight. It's mathematically unworkable without major outside help or extreme financial risk. Why this keeps happening? Here's the part nobody says out loud. The system is not designed around your long-term comfort. It's designed around transaction completion. Sellers price homes based on recent sales. Banks approve loans based on default probability. Agents get paid when deals close. Approval does not equal affordability. There's no financial referee saying, "Hey, maybe this will slowly suffocate you." Once you sign the papers, you're committed. You can't casually undo it 6 months later without wrecking your credit and losing your equity. So people stay. They stay stressed. They stay overextended. They stay in jobs they can't afford to leave. And they wonder why achieving the dream feels more like pressure than peace. Here's the uncomfortable conclusion. For roughly 70–80% of American households, a $500, 000 home is not realistically affordable. Not in a stable way. Not in a sleep-at-night way. Not without accepting financial fragility that would have been considered reckless 25 years ago. And this is important. This is not about laziness. This is not about avocado toast. This is not about you falling behind. This is about a housing market that has drifted away from income reality. Since 1990, home prices have risen around 400%. Median household income closer to 180%. When the asset grows more than twice as fast as earnings, the strain isn't personal. It's structural. The equation doesn't balance. And yet we keep pretending it does. The myth we keep selling. We repeat. Home ownership builds wealth. And historically, yes, it often has. But that statement skips a critical step. You have to survive the mortgage long enough to build that wealth. If the payment consumes your flexibility, drains your savings, and forces you into constant stress, the theoretical equity becomes irrelevant. You cannot budget your way out of a systemic affordability gap. You cannot side hustle your way to a 6-figure down payment while rent is taking 35–40% of your income. You cannot positive think your way into a lower interest rate. Reality doesn't respond to motivation. It responds to math. So what can you do? You look at the numbers clearly, and then you make a decision based on reality, not pressure. Maybe that means continuing to rent and investing aggressively, targeting a $350, 000 home instead of $500, 000, moving farther out, waiting, or acknowledging that in your current market, buying simply isn't wise right now. And here's something nobody says loudly enough. There is no medal for being house poor. There is no trophy for maxing out your debt-to-income ratio. The pride of getting the keys lasts a weekend. The stress of the payment lasts decades. The real question isn't, can I get approved? It's, will this house make my life better, or just make my bank richer? A direct message. If you're looking at a $500, 000 house, and your household income is under roughly $140, 000, pause. Not because you're incapable, but because the margin is razor thin. It doesn't matter what the lender says you qualify for. It doesn't matter what your agent says is normal. Approval is about default probability. Affordability is about quality of life. Those are not the same thing. What happens when you ignore this? Because many people do. You convince yourself it'll be fine. You expect raises that aren't guaranteed. You assume overtime will always be available. You promise yourself you'll figure it out. So you buy the house. Month 1, tight, but manageable. Month 2, still okay. You cut restaurants, cancel subscriptions. Month 4, the car needs $800 in repairs. Credit card. Month 7, the AC fails in the middle of summer. $3, $500. Financed. Month 9, hours get reduced at work. Now you're short every month. And the emergency fund you meant to build, it never materialized because there was never room. That's what being house poor looks like. Technically, you own a home. Realistically, the bank owns your stress for 30 years. Every expense becomes a negotiation. Every decision filters through one question. Can we still make the mortgage? You stop enjoying the house. You start managing it like a liability. The normalization of struggle. Here's the part that's almost surreal. We've normalized this. We've rebranded chronic financial tension as just part of adulthood. Can't furnish half the rooms. That's the journey. Living on instant noodles because the mortgage ate your margin. You're building equity. Constant anxiety. Welcome to homeownership. It's as if we've collectively agreed that suffering is a rite of passage instead of a warning sign. But struggling to afford shelter isn't a badge of honor. It's a signal. Here's the strange part. The numbers are shouting at you, but culture is whispering, just buy. Your parents owned a home by your age. Never mind that their house costs 3 times their annual income, and yours costs 6. Your friends are closing on places. Never mind that you have no idea what their debt load looks like behind those celebratory Instagram photos. You hear renting is throwing money away, but so is committing to a mortgage you can't sustain. Except that version comes with compounding stress and far bigger consequences. So let me offer you something you rarely hear. You are allowed to opt out. You can look at a $500, 000 house, run the honest math, and decide that preserving your financial stability matters more than owning an address. You can rent. You can invest the difference. You can wait. You can move. You can admit that what used to be a middle-class milestone has, in many markets, become a high-income luxury. And none of that makes you a failure. What actually builds wealth? It's not barely hanging on to an oversized mortgage. It's margin. It's having room in your budget. It's being able to invest consistently. It's replacing a broken appliance without panic. It's contributing to retirement without choosing between that and fixing the roof. It's sleeping at night without calculating worst-case scenarios. Real wealth is flexibility, not equity that exists on paper while you're cash poor and stressed. Follow the incentives. The financial system is very good at selling homeownership as universally correct. But look at who benefits when you buy. The bank earns 30 years of interest. The agent earns a commission based on price. The insurer earns premiums. The county collects higher property taxes. Nobody gets paid when you say, "This doesn't make financial sense for me." There is no commission on restraint. There is no bonus for patience. If you feel priced out, if you feel behind, if you feel like you missed the window, if you feel like you're failing some invisible adulthood test, pause. You are not broken. The ratio between home prices and wages has changed dramatically. What was accessible to previous generations at medium income now requires upper-tier earnings in many cities. A $500, 000 home is not a starter home on an $84, 000 income. It's not conservative. It's not stable. And stretching into it doesn't make you brave. It makes you exposed. The only question that matters. Not, what can I get approved for? But, what can I afford while still building a life? Run the full numbers. All of them. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, savings, retirement, emergencies. If the math doesn't work, walk away. There is no shame in that. There is no prize for financial self-sabotage. Long-term perspective. Maybe your income grows dramatically in 5 years. Maybe prices cool. Maybe you relocate to a market where $500, 000 buys something that actually aligns with your income. But today, at current rates, current prices, current wages, this equation is strained for most households. Pretending otherwise doesn't make you optimistic. It just increases the odds that you become another foreclosure statistic when the margin disappears. The practical advice. Stop asking, "What's the maximum loan I can get?" Start asking, "What's the payment that lets me live without constant stress?" Find the number where you can. Pay the mortgage. Maintain the property. Build an emergency fund. Invest consistently and still enjoy your life occasionally. For most households, that number is significantly lower than $500, 000. And that's fine. You are not less ambitious because you're realistic. You are not behind because you refuse to gamble your financial stability for countertops and curb appeal. You're simply choosing math over momentum. The housing market will continue acting like these prices are normal. Banks will continue approving loans near the edge. Agents will continue saying, "It's a great time to buy." But you don't have to participate in a system that doesn't align with your reality. Sometimes the most powerful financial move you can make is recognizing when the game no longer makes sense and stepping off the board.